Hey everybody, Jen Hatmaker here, your host of the For the Love podcast. Welcome to the show. It's a big one today, guys. We are in a series called For the Love of Being Seen and Heard. We've had really some profound conversations in this particular series with a group of really extraordinary people who are using their voices and their experiences to help others see and hear and understand some really vitally important issues in the world right now. I think the inability to see, hear, listen, or understand extends like it's almost like a cultural plague right now, right? It goes on and on. And then for the purpose of today's episode, there is a brave, courageous, sturdy group of people who have taken to the streets in the name of justice because they are heartbroken and angry about the constant gun violence in our country. And they are refusing to sit by. They're advocating for change. So they've raised their voices and said things like, I can't breathe. And they've said things like, say her name. And they are looking to prevent tragedies like the ones that constantly happen, constantly. Uvalde, Colorado, Memphis, Nashville, Monterey Park, just this year. Hell, we're not a half a year into 2023, and there have been more than 260 mass shootings in America. So you know me, if you follow me over on my personal socials, but I have cycled through all of it: fury, despair, anger over our American gun culture, our obsession with guns, and particularly our legislators' refusal to really make any meaningful changes, by the way, that we are pretty unanimous on as a constituency, like across party lines, to some of these just kind of common sense gun responsibility measures. But it continues to be endless mass shootings. And I just keep wondering how many. What's the number? What's the number? How many gun deaths? What number does it matter? What number can we get our legislators to budge? How many elementary schools need to be shot up? What's the number? How many targeted LGBTQIA shootings do we have to have? What's the number? What's the magic number? So despite that cheery tirade, and how bleak things sometimes look in the aftermath of yet another act of gun violence, there are people who are tirelessly fighting for change. They are, and they're mattering. Change can happen, and in ways big and small, it is happening. That's because it's not going to just happen of its own momentum. It is because people join this fight. Then they march and they get on their knees in front of Congress and beg them to care about dead children in schools. And they organize and they register voters and they campaign and they just refuse to give up. Our next guest today is one of them, one of those fearless leaders. We have Gloria Pan today on the show. She's an activist. She is the vice president for Moms Rising. So Moms Rising exists and has existed to take on the most critical issues facing women and mothers and families, okay, by educating the public, mobilizing massive grassroots action to create change. And so one of the tent poles of their advocacy is to accelerate impact on Capitol Hill and state capitals to affect legislative change for families and children around gun safety. So Gloria is the head of that initiative, and she's made her voice heard all over the place. CNN, Los Angeles Times, NPR, all kinds of media platforms. She's tenacious, she's smart. I learned something today. She introduced a dialogue around the Second Amendment today that I really hadn't heard. And it really gave me pause. And it is a different narrative than the one that we are constantly hearing. I'm excited for you to listen to this conversation. I hope it is informative and helpful and even hopeful, because there is hope even now, even yet. So I'm so grateful for her and her time today. I'm so pleased to share my conversation with the amazing Gloria Pan. Gloria, I am so glad to meet you. I've been looking forward to meeting you, and for all that you are about to bring to the table, I want to say thank you in advance for your time and your energy toward this. I am so glad you exist and glad about your work. So thank you again for being here.
I'm very glad to be here, Jen, and it's so great to meet you.
So, okay, Gloria, I've told my listeners just a little bit. I high-leveled for them kind of who you are and what it is that you do. First, can you just tell my community, God, this is who I am, this is where I am, these are my people, this is my deal. And then could you discuss just sort of the origin story of Moms Rising and what your involvement is and what inspired you to sort of on-ramp here into this particular community?
Sure. So I'm a mom. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I've got 2 kids. One of them is sleeping upstairs right now, even though it's noon, because he's a young adult.
Say less.
So for those of your listenership that are not familiar with Moms Rising, let me just start there. Moms Rising, we are a national on the ground and online organization of more than 1 million moms and family members across the country. We were founded, 15 years ago on pocketbook issues, things like family and medical leave, fair pay for work, and those continue to be our signature issues. But over time, we've become kind of the umbrella organization for the leading issues that are impacting families at any given moment. So for example, under the Obama administration, we had a huge campaign fighting for access to healthcare. And under the last administration, we had a big campaign pushing back against family separation and for immigration reform. So we cover almost everything. We touch on almost everything. Of course, gun violence prevention. We did not do gun violence prevention until Sandy Hook. And you know how we sometimes hear people say, where were you when John F. Kennedy was assassinated? Well, for many people, I think it's legitimate to say, where were you when Sandy Hook happened? After that happened, there was just such an outpouring of anger and grief from our members across the country, reaching out to us, demanding, what can we do to make sure that this never happens again? And we are a member responsive organization. So, we jumped into the gun policy fight, the fight for safety from gun violence immediately after Sandy Hook. So I've been doing this for more than 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start at the high level and then we'll drill down a little bit. As we know, guns are now the leading cause of death for kids in America. It's just such a crazy sentence to say. And yet, despite all the data, all the facts, it's not partisan. We cannot convince some of our legislators that guns are the problem. This makes me feel regularly so disempowered and a little bit hopeless. And so if we were just going to start broadly, what do you think are the most important, maybe first 2 or 3 steps that should be taken to begin to reduce gun violence? And this is a huge ship and it will turn very slowly for a million reasons. We already have so many guns in circulation, more than anybody in the entire planet. So this isn't simple. There's no simple answer here. But nonetheless, what do you see as this, and this is where we should start?
That's a really difficult question
to
answer. We got where we are because there was a 50-year plan, a multi-decade plan from the gun rights extremists, and they started executing that plan around 1977. And we need to have our own 50-year plan. Okay. When I started on this path, gun violence deaths in this country hovered around 32,000 people a year. And that was pretty consistent for many, many years. Now we're nearing 50,000, right? And we have so many guns, more guns than people in this country. And guns have seeped into every nook and cranny of our lives, in the public spaces, and now into our private spaces. A third of households in the United States actually own guns, including likely many of the homes of our own family and friends.
Yeah.
So, practically speaking, if you have children and you're sending them over to somebody's house to play, don't be shy, as you ask and you make them know, my child has allergies. You should also ask, by the way, if you have a gun in your home, is it securely locked? Ensure those things, just for your own peace of mind and to make sure that no accidents might happen, right? And so the public is so upset about gun violence. Your very understandable despair, anger, that's shared by so many people. The public wants gun policy reform.
Yeah.
More than 70% in a recent poll want better gun laws.
Sure.
Right?
Across the aisle, we're kind of unanimous in our wishes in some regards.
Right. So it is very important to continue making your feelings known. Continue making those phone calls. Continue signing those petitions. Continue turning out for rallies, right? And in any way you can, express your anger, express your despair, express your demands for accountability from your lawmakers, okay? But honestly, we have a culture problem. We have a culture problem because gun rights extremists are having a completely different conversation. The narrative that they have is that we want guns everywhere because that's our constitutional right. In all the time that I've been in this fight, I have seen so many survivors, from Uvalde, from Parkland, from Sandy Hook, all of the famous mass shootings. They're trying to turn their grief into some kind of action. And they parade the halls of Congress in state houses. They re-traumatize themselves again and again. I've heard so many stories of them going to the offices of lawmakers who pray with them, who cry with them, and then turn around and betray them by voting a hard no on even the simplest of gun policy reform. So clearly they're answering to something else. And what they're answering to is this conception that, the Second Amendment is this super constitutional right that guarantees our freedoms. And honestly, Jen, that conception was manufactured by the NRA and the right-wing extremists over their 50-year plan.
Yeah.
And it's just not true. And we need to change that before we can move anywhere near, moving in the right direction for gun safety for everybody.
So, you guys, here's the thing. I definitely play favorites in the kitchen. I have my go-to skillet and cookware that I always use and that I've used a million times over, and typically I don't stray. However, I recently added a new pan into rotation and I'm obsessed. It's from a bakeware and cookware brand called Caraway. You maybe have heard of it. They make super high quality and ceramic coated kitchenware with just a very naturally slick surface. But the real deal here is that it's also free of toxic forever chemicals that you may be hearing about lately in other nonstick pans. But also, you guys, I'm not joking. These pans are gorgeous. What really caught my eye were the colors. Sorry, I am who I am. Like sage, marigold, rose quartz, and this gorgeous silt green, which is the one that I have. Anyhow, I love cooking in my Caraway. Eggs are an absolute breeze. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Sauteing veggies, all of it. And without hardly any oil because it doesn't stick. Their cookware sets also include complimentary easy access storage solutions, like little hanger things for the lids and little things you can set your pans in upright. It's awesome. It's just awesome. No more disorganized pans and pot lids strewn everywhere. So you want to check them out? Don't miss Caraway's Summer Refresh event through July 15th with 10% off the whole site wide. This is also, you guys, a perfect gift. Newlyweds, graduates, housewarming, you name it. Just visit carawayhome.com/forthelove and you'll get 10% off during their summer refresh event. Certain exclusions apply. That's carawayhome.com/forthelove or use the code forthelove at checkout. Caraway, you guys, it's so great. Non-toxic cookware made modern. A fun thing for me that I've told you about before is that my 3 a.m. nighttime brain wants to wake up and think about, well, like health insurance premiums that are due and my children's future and the state of all of our cars and what I said that one time to that one person. But also a fun thing for me now is that 3 a.m. brain is no longer invited to the party because of one thing: Focal CBD sleep gummies. They have changed my sleep game entirely. First of all, they work in that they have solved my middle of the night problems, but they're also yummy, like healthy sleep candy. I don't know what kind of magic makes them so effective because I'm not a scientist, but there's no weirdness in these. There's nothing bad. It's only good stuff only, okay? So maybe you are a champion sleeper. If so, congratulations. And you just need a little focus during the day. Guess what? Focal has daytime gummies too. So I've got a code for you. If you want to change your brain game, For the Love is your code to get 20% off at focal.com. But really, sleep is priceless. So you can thank me later. So that's Focal, FOCL.com. And your code is For the Love for 20% off.
Do you see, when you say we need to change that, in your opinion, do you mean we need to change it constitutionally or culturally or both?
There are laws, in 2008, there was the landmark Heller decision from the Supreme Court, which basically changed the understanding of gun rights from a group right, because the militia is in the Second Amendment, and for hundreds of years, it was settled law. Gun rights are about group rights. But the 2008 Heller decision changed it into an individual right, right? So that needs to be addressed. And then most recently last year, based on the Heller decision, the Supreme Court went even further by the Bruin decision, okay, which basically has enabled, right-wing gun extremists to begin dismantling whatever flimsy safety we have in our policies. So they're starting to use the Bruin decision to dismantle gun safety laws like pistol purchase permits. So these things need to be considered. But we do need to understand the history of really what the Second Amendment is all about, right? And, there's this idea that it was about Minutemen and freedom fighters, right? And aren't we all Minutemen and freedom fighters? Don't we all want to defend our democracy? Therefore, we need to have guns. But, that history is actually not true. The militia, referred to in the Second Amendment, actually referred to slave militias, right? And there is increasing scholarship coming out that proves that, right? At the time of the founding of the country, even before that, there was no law enforcement, any kind of safety, right? So then along comes the Revolutionary War, and then the Constitution. They were putting together the Constitution, and it had all of these incredible, wonderful ideas that were based on Enlightenment language about how people have fundamental rights. Right? First of all, the people, our founding fathers were a very specific group of people.
Of course.
Right? They were white men.
Yeah.
And when they were thinking about universal rights, they were really referring to people that were just like themselves. Propertied, elite, white, male, right? That's what they were really thinking about. But nevertheless, our founding document had language that talked about universal rights. And that was very, very uncomfortable, considering that in the South, so many people were enslaved, right? So now we were heading towards creating this new country. And we had this language that we were trying to build this country on. And the Southern colonies were very, very uncomfortable, especially in the North, considering that in the North, there's this growing discomfort, growing moral outrage, actually, over the fact that people were enslaved. And the Southern colonies were thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And if we become a country and suddenly there's this nation and they have the ability to call up people, for a national army, who is going to serve in our patrols and make sure that we're safe from, our slaves? Don't forget, in the Constitution, there was the guarantee already, that they were not going to take away their slaves, right? There was this 3/5 clause. So the slavery was actually embedded in the Constitution. So all of this happened already, but they were like, but if you take away our manpower in order to defend ourselves from our slaves, you're basically, attacking our system anyway, right? And so in order to make sure that the Southern colonies agreed to ratify the Constitution, suddenly there was this very weird little amendment that was put into the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment. That is the true history of the Second Amendment. So how did we get here, right?
Yeah.
It just sort of sat there, right? For hundreds of years, the Second Amendment sat in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and nothing much happened. It was settled constitutional law.
Yeah.
And then in 1977, there was what they call the Revolt of Cincinnati. Okay. And the NRA had been, a gun safety organization. They were founded to make sure that people knew how to handle their guns correctly, right? And there was an internal revolt. And basically gun extremists took over, and they were like, we're not going to be about gun safety anymore. We're going to be about gun rights. And, much of this was in response to the tumult of the 1960s, right? And they basically started implementing their plan to change the understanding of gun rights, making the case that, no, this is about individual safety and other things. They just started talking about how guns guarantee our other rights. They just started doing this. This was a 50-year plan. And it culminated in the Heller decision in 2008. And, that 2008 Heller decision, what it did was it gave the gun manufacturers and gun extremists to use the language of safety to make people afraid. They made people afraid of people that were not like themselves. And it helped them sell millions and millions of guns, basically by pointing out, who are you afraid of? And frankly, the people that they were sometimes very overtly saying is, you need to be afraid of Black people, Latino people, people who are not Christian.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
Yeah. And we feel that. I feel the permeation of just absolute fear language, this fearful defensive posture toward what used to just be our neighbors, right? And it's insidious, and at this point, ubiquitous. I mean, this is just, I think just very recently, it seemed like right rapidly in a row, very recently, someone got shot for knocking on a neighbor's door, just knocking on a neighbor's door. That happened, or opening the wrong car door. Like, this is just ordinary life stuff. But when you have armed people and then told them to be afraid and instructed them to be on guard to protect themselves and defend themselves, that makes you scared. It makes you feel as if you are always in danger, and you aren't. You aren't in danger. But we now have an entire culture of people who think they are in danger on the regular in their home. If a neighbor knocks on the door, they're in danger. It's just, it's like we've lost our collective minds, and I don't know how to unravel this. We can and should, of course, do everything we can toward legislation and law, but what's in our minds and hearts, that is way harder to unspool. And it worked. That 50-year plan worked. I will say that was effective. That was a long game, and it was well played. And now it has worked. Because the narrative of this at this point, of course, is more guns, because guns keep you safe from other guns.
Which is actually not true.
It's actually not true, right? The data doesn't bear out.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But that doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. And there is the theme of safety, right? And then there is also, the gun rights extremists have also really stoked up. You can feel powerful. You can be more of a man if you own a gun, right? And they have also actively encouraged, this empowerment and being able to walk outside with your gun so people can be afraid of you.
That's right. Right. This sort of macho, protector, masculine narrative. And that also, to be fair, has been very effective. Come and take it, like pry it out of my cold, dead hands, all that language. It's worked, and they found their target. So this conversation has a million sort of tendrils, of course. So tell me more about some of the work that you do. What does it look like? What does Moms Rising advocacy look like? And you're the vice president. And so, and to your earlier point at the top of the show, your organization exists and was founded on a myriad of issues that face families and culture and safety and security. And so you weren't a myopic, one issue organization. Now, of course, this is a deep well of your work. And so can you talk a little bit about what initiatives that you have currently in your organization, where you are onboarding your volunteers, where you are concentrating your particular efforts?
We can't do the work we're doing unless our members are there with us. And when I say members, it is very broad. We consider all moms and families who care about the future of their families and their communities and our country as our constituency. And we very much believe that our job is to bring their voices and their concerns to the policymaking table and to the policymaking public discussion, right? And that means, you share a story. Perhaps it's on childcare. Perhaps it's on gun violence. And we We'll put you in front of Congress possibly to testify in hearings. We will introduce you to the media who are looking for these stories, to speak at rallies, right? We put you in storybooks, which we deliver, to stakeholders, and to say, look, here are the personal stories around this issue from real voices across the country, which are representative of the experiences of millions of families across the country. So we can't do the work that we're doing unless we have our members behind us willing to share their personal experiences and representing the experiences of so many families. So childcare has been a huge issue for us. As we saw over the pandemic, lack of access to childcare. Now you're at home. How do you do your work if your kids are at home? I mean, that was a very pandemic specific issue. But what happened after that was childcare centers had to close. And then now we're back to work, and access to childcare it always has been, but it's really desperately unaffordable. And how can you pay the bills if you don't have quality, affordable childcare so that you can focus on earning a buck for your family, right? Access to healthcare continues to be an issue. We plug into the federal budget making process. To make sure that funds are available to support families through programs like SNAP, right? Pandemic relief actually lifted 50% of children in poverty out of poverty. And we have been fighting to maintain that pandemic relief. And unfortunately, that didn't succeed as well as we would have liked it to. We're fighting right now also for maternal justice. For a country as wealthy as ours, it is absolutely shameful that so many of our moms, particularly moms of color, are at such high risk and actually die from pregnancy-related and birth-related complications. And we are fighting for the Momnibus to address this. We touch on almost everything, and the fight goes on. And given the political balance of Congress right now, successes are hard fought. But we have to continue fighting. And but I will say one thing that is very, very gratifying and wonderful is the fact that not too long ago, issues that are concern for moms and families were never even talked about in Congress, right? Childcare, paid family and medical leave, things that we call care policies that enable families to be able to care for our families, right? Never even talked about. But because of the work of Moms Rising and our partners out there and moms and families speaking out, it is now front and center for many lawmakers, including President Biden, who talks about how do we take care of our families all the time. And that actually happened, just fairly recently over the last 5 to 10 years. So things are working in that sense. It is moving in the right direction. So join us, help us build this momentum towards this future where the well-being of families is front and center for this country, because what are we without our families?
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Something I wrote about in my book, Fierce, Free, and Full of Fire, was all about wanting to choose my yeses. We all want that, right? But that means we have to have some necessary no's, right? No's that can be, frankly, really hard to dish out sometimes, because it's super easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs or wants or expects, and then hand out just way too many yeses and never take a moment to evaluate if that's the right choice for us, which all of that can leave us feeling overwhelmed, stretched thin, burned out, even potentially resentful. So therapy, you guys, can absolutely give you the tools to find more balance in your life and learn how to set boundaries so that you can keep the right yeses in your life without leaving yourself behind. If you're thinking of starting therapy, consider BetterHelp or just give it a try. When you fill out a brief questionnaire, they connect you with a licensed therapist in a convenient flexible, affordable, entirely online setting. And you can even switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if you need to. So find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/forthelove today and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/forthelove.
In the area of gun violence, it can just feel, and it does feel often, we cannot gain any traction. Nothing is happening. Nothing is changing. This is hopeless. We are beating our heads against the wall. We are screaming into the wind. We can't move the needle in the areas that it has to be moved. It feels that way a lot. But to your point, this is the way change happens. It's the way change has always happened. It is gritty and hard and long, and it's also small. Like, this is one of those mountains that has to be chipped away at. There isn't one fell swoop here. And so to that end, I wonder if, particularly in the area of gun violence, what have you seen semi-recently that would be small victories where you feel like, God, we gained a little ground here, or this took, or this stuck, or we moved the needle? I mean, however small it was, because those eventually accrue and add up to change.
I will say that the one thing that really, really gives me hope is our young people, the upcoming generations. Their view of the world is just so different from ours. You know, there has never been such a multicultural, multi-ethnic, diverse generation, and it's increasingly so. And their friends, you know, even if they don't know somebody who's different from themselves in a particular way, they're on social media and they see it. And they don't want unfairness for anybody. They don't want, you know, targeted racism and violence and structural racism that impact people. They don't want anybody to experience that. And so on the gun violence issue, it really is a very, very particular viewpoint. And I can't see how it's going to survive with our younger generations. I can't see it. So most immediately, it's been very exciting to see Maxwell Frost elected to Congress out of Florida. He's 26 years old. He is the youngest member of Congress, and he literally came out of March for Our Lives, which is the group that came out of the Parkland shooting, right? And he's just so inspirational, and he is a gun violence champion. So the fact that he is now in Congress is a huge victory and very, very encouraging. And I think that he's very representative. So I look at my own children, look at your own children. You know, they are the future. We're also seeing increasingly young voters, right? They have traditionally kind of sat it out because, you know, they just didn't pay attention. They were busy growing up. But they now are increasingly understanding that
You're right.
the process of growing up includes increasingly taking responsibility for your own future.
Yeah.
So we're seeing young people come out to vote.
Yeah,
right?
they're engaged.
Of course, it's not only about gun violence. It's also about reproductive rights. It's also about climate change, right? I am so sorry to the young people that we have failed you. We are doing the best we can.
Yeah.
But we are so grateful that young people increasingly see that they are going to be their own saviors. And I am so excited to see that.
I am too. I believe in them. And I have 5 kids, and they range from 17 to 25. So this is my age group that I house and raise. And they're different. They're different than I was at their age. They are paying attention in ways that I'd never even dreamed of. They race to early voting. I mean, they're just different. And I too have a lot of faith in them. There's a lot to unravel, but I too believe in their capacity, their tenacity, and just who they are. They're different. They're a different generation. So I'm hopeful too. As for us in our age, we still fight. As you said, we have to. This is our responsibility. This is on our watch. We're the adults in the room right now. And so on we go. Can you just, before we sign off here, can you tell my listeners how they can find out more about Moms Rising, how they can get involved, how they can, all of that, and where?
Sure. So first of all, please visit our website, momsrising.org. Take a look at all of the things that we've been doing and sign up. Sign up to be part of our email list so you can know what we're up to at any given moment and also to take action, right? Our email lists, includes, information about our online meetings. And also, like, now is the time to call your senator. Now is the time to call your representative about whatever issue. And then also sign our petitions. And by the way, I do want to emphasize petitions do matter. Some people are like, oh, what do petitions mean? Petitions matter. We deliver our petitions and we use it in many, many different ways. So sign up for our email list and then also, follow us. Follow us on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, and any other social media channel that you may be on. And if you are really fired up, we are extremely accessible. Send an email to keepmarching@momsrising.org and let us know your thoughts. And we are happy to have a conversation with you on how you can really make a difference.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you for your work. Thank you for keeping your foot on the gas. Thank you for not giving up. Because this is slow, hard work. It's not sexy. It's not glamorous. It's baked into the sauce is disappointment, discouragement. And so I am so thankful that you have put your hand to this work and you continue to. And I'm thrilled to put all this in front of my community. We're very like-minded. Last question. I ask all my guests this every series, all the time. And I would feel free to answer this however it is you want to. We get earnest answers to this. We get absurd, hilarious answers, whatever you're feeling like today. It's a question I borrowed from another writer, Barbara Brown Taylor. This is her question. What is saving your life right now?
This is not going to be witty or clever, but honestly, I am planning on taking a real break this summer, completely unplugging. And honestly, I'm like the kind of person who's I'm go, 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 right? I'm hardly ever offline. And I have made a promise to myself this summer that I'm going to just turn everything off. I'm going to turn everything off and I'm going to take a multi-week break and I'm going to retreat into private life. And I want to enjoy my family. I want to enjoy my friends. I would say my husband's from Montana and we're going to be spending some time there. It's I'm going to breathe the fresh, mountain air, assuming the Canadian wildfires don't come down while we're there. Right.
That's right.
But that's what I'm going to be doing. And that is saving my life right now. I am looking forward to that break. And I am trusting that on the other side of it, I'm going to come back and I am just going to be, fired up and ready to go. I also want to thank you, Jen, for inviting me here and thanking you and your audience members, because honestly, the work that we do is not possible unless we all pull together.
That's right.
And make things happen. And that includes you and everybody like you and us and everyone. So thank you.
That's right. You're welcome. And my estimation, it will always be the women who pull the ship forward. And I definitely put my chips on us. So this is how we do it. Thank you so much, Gloria, for being here today. And for everybody listening, I will link to all of Gloria's stuff, all of Moms Rising socials, everything she mentioned, I'll have for you in one spot. And so let's on board. Let's grab an oar and row. This is what we do. So thank you. I hope you enjoy your time off this summer. I respect that decision. Your work is too hard to do endlessly with no respite at all. It's too hard. And so what you are actually doing is putting gas in the tank to keep going. And so, such a good decision. So good. I hope it is so renewing and restful. I hope your brain takes a break, your body takes a break, your heart takes a break, and that delivers to you everything that you deserve in terms of taking a breath. So, and then we'll see you when you come back on the other side.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, you guys. Okay, as promised, go to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, and we'll have all of this for you, where you can sign up, where you can follow on socials, how you can get involved. I just keep thinking when we look historically backward over all major social and cultural reforms in our country, this is how it's always gone. It's looked like this. It's just ordinary people, okay, who come together and make it happen. We cannot wait for change to come from the top down. It isn't coming. I mean, at least some of our leaders have made that clear. They don't care. They don't listen. They won't budge. It doesn't matter what their constituency asks for. They're in lockstep on the way that they are going to vote and what they will or will not pass around gun responsibility. And so this is ours. This is ours to do. And it's worked before. And however the quote goes, it's really the only thing that ever has. So I appreciate Gloria's tenacity, and I'm looking forward to being a part of Moms Rising. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for paying attention to the Being Seen and Heard series. These are hugely important issues. These are the places where people are saying, please, can you see and hear me, right? And so if you would like to share this episode, you can find back over at jenhatmaker.com. There is all the show notes and the link to this. And so thank you every time you do that. And thank you for subscribing and reviewing and rating the show. All of that matters. We read it all, we see it all, we watch it all. It matters to this space that we love to continue to create for you. So on behalf of Laura, my producer, and her team over at Four Eyes, and Amanda and I, we love you. We love to serve you. And we'll see you next week, you guys.